You have to be quick if you want an Altguild. Altguild.com.
So you're interested in being able to put more inserts inside your traveler's notebook, but you don't have enough strings available to do so. There's a few different answers to this, but before we get into all of that, let's just cover the three basic different styles of traveler's notebooks in terms of the elastics that go into them. This is your basic style here. This is called a traditional, and what that means is that you have two eyelets at the top, two eyelets down at the bottom. Of course, the one in the center is for the string, the closure string. But as you can see, one eyelet is above the other. There's also the dual style, which is exactly the same functionally, really, as the traditional style, but instead of one eyelet above the other, one's on one side and one's on the other. They're side by side instead, both at the top and at the bottom. This essentially gives you one elastic down this way, one elastic down this way, versus the two elastics that you're going to see in a traditional. There's also the quad, which is a bit confusing because there's three eyelets, but quad means four. But really what it's talking about is the number of elastics available to you on the inside. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the quad. But we're going to deal today, though, with just a traditional elastic system. So let me get this set up for you. Got a piece of elastic already pre-cut for this. Give me a moment to get this threaded in here. The reason I'm putting it into the center here is so that I can use my finger to hold on to it so it doesn't pop out as I thread everything. There we go. Let's get that. Voila. So there's your traditional saws. You have your main elastic, which is going through the top and the very bottom hole. Then you have your secondary elastic. A lot of people don't use this, but some people do. You notice the knot's in the center. A lot of people will move that knot down to the bottom because they don't want it in the middle of their notebook. Some don't really care. Again, this is all about preference. So that is the traditional setup. And what people would do is they take their notebook. And for those of you who already have been in this world for a while, you can just skip ahead if you want, but there are new people out there, so I want to make sure I got them covered. So there goes your first insert, but now how do you put the more notebooks in here? We got one more elastic, but you want to put, like, say, two more notebooks. How are you going to do that? So what people do there is they'll take the two notebooks, or should I say inserts. I always get the meaning mixed up. And you get yourself an elastic band, or piece of elastic, whatever the case is. And you open it up to the middle. This is, again, basic. There's lots of little different ways in which you can do this. So we'll get them joined together like this, so voila. Now at the very beginning, first thing people try and do is they take their center one and they'll push it between the two like so. Get in there. There, comes through the center, and you got your three notebooks inside there. Now, that's not the greatest way. Well, I shouldn't say it's not the greatest way. It's a preference thing. With it done this way, when you turn your book upside down, they can fall out fairly easy. So then you start realizing, hey, you know what? I can just take your cover and slide it under the other cover and pull them apart a bit, drop the center one down, voila. Again, good, except now they're not gonna fall out on you. So that's the basic setup. Of course, you have the elastic for keeping it closed. Voila. That is your standard traveler's notebook. Now, we're going to change things up a little bit. Let me just get this all removed. Let's say you want your notebooks to have their own strings, so you don't have to do this type of thing. So you need more strings, but you only got 2, but say you got 3 notebooks that you want inside there. There's no rules when it comes to Traveler's Notebook. Just because this is the setup it came with doesn't mean you can't change it. So I'm going to show you what I mean. Just take out the original elastic. Zoop. Out she goes. I'm going to take a longer one. And basically I'm going to thread it twice. Because I'm using eyelets, that works out really, really good. Eyelets are meant to protect the actual holes inside there. And when you thread these in, just give me a sec here, you don't have to worry so much about stretching the holes or slowly warping the holes. That's another benefit to eyelets. If you take a look at this cover here, this one of course doesn't have eyelets. I'm not sure if you can quite see that or not. Come on, focus. Well, either way, the hole here is been gouged like a saw has cut through or pulled down. It's warped the hole, so it's more oval shaped. That's what happens when you don't use eyelets. Eyelets are there to protect the leather. So, anyways, let's finish this off. There we go. So normally you would now tie off in the center like that. You tie a knot and then you cut off the excess. Or what I prefer to do is go to the bottom and tie it off down here instead. Now again, what's nice again about the eyelets is these eyelets, I said it looked like it was difficult putting it through, but it's not. Here's one. I got 3 elastics inside here. There's lots of room here to fit it through. Frankly, I could probably put a 4th. It'd be a little bit difficult getting in there, but it would fit. So you can get up to easily 3 to 4 elastics inside here. So now that I've got it tied off, you've got the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 elastics to use. But now what about these? Well, this extra that's here is optional. You could have cut these shorter so it didn't. But if you do it longer, you can have some fun with it. Do some decorative work to it. Let me just get this put together. And voila. So now you got a decorative element hanging off the bottom. Of course, trim off the excess elastic and you're pretty much good to go. So let's put this cover together. 4 elastics. We don't need the elastic joining these 2 together anymore, so we'll remove that. Boop. And set it up. And then the last elastic, which is that secondary one, again, down at the bottom, we can throw in a 4th cover. There we go. All 4 on their own individual strings. Let's drop in the closer elastic. There we go. 1 traveler's notebook, 4 inserts, 4 strings. It's a traditional style, some little decorative fun that you, optional what you want to do there. And you got yourself your cover. Now for your second tip, I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm going to bring this one in. A little tiny bit of history here. The reason that we're using elastics to hold our inserts in is because of the popularity of the Traveler's Notebook made by Midori, or the Midori Traveler's Notebook, though I think they're called the Traveler's Notebook Company now. Don't quote me on that. I think that's what's happened with their name. They've changed their name a few times, I think. But back in around, I don't know, 2005, 2006, around that period, the company came out with their Traveler's Notebook cover. It's a mass-produced leather cover. You can find them in a lot of different notebook stores, Amazon. I've even found them on Walmart. They use elastics to hold in your covers, and everybody started making covers that used the elastics. Now, prior to that, I used to make not so much notebooks, but for Gen X and before, you'll understand this, there's the checkbooks. And I used to make checkbook covers for the checkbooks. And I didn't use elastic. Instead, what I used was leather cord. That's this stuff right here. This stuff's relatively expensive. So I'm not going to just cut off a piece for an example. But this is my everyday carry that you see here. And yes, it has an elastic here, but the actual inside, I'm not using elastics at all. Now, there's a benefit to that in the fact that, as we all know, over time that elastic starts to deteriorate. It's like, you know, the elastic in underwear or bathing suits and that. It breaks down, and essentially what you're left with now is the outer sheath of the elastic, which is essentially a string that's holding everything together. Eventually you might order some more offline with whatever company you're dealing with, or you'll go to a fabric store and get yourself some new elastic and restring it, and it's good for a while again, but again, over time it breaks down. You gotta replace it. With using leather cord, or by all means use like thin shoestring or some other string that you might be able to get a hold of. If you use that instead, it's not as convenient as you know, elastic, because you can stretch the elastic and take your covers out really, really easy, like that. That's the convenience of the elastic, but it comes at a price, and again, they wear out. Where with the string, you rarely ever have to replace the leather cord, or string as I was calling it. Let me take this one apart for you. So I have 3 covers and, 3 inserts. They're in there snugly, so just give me a sec as I try and pop these out. So there's my 2, similar to what we were doing with the elastic, but instead of elastic joining these 2 together, I'm using a piece of leather cord to join this together. And then, of course, there's the center on the main. There's your leather cord, cut and tightened so it's just snug. It's just a little bit loose. Now, what that does for you is, well, first off, because it's not an elastic, you don't have that tension happening where the elastic, especially for someone who got a lot of inserts inside there or thick notebooks inside there, you tighten up your elastic to be able to hold them in so they don't do this kind of thing here where they start to stretch and bow on the string and they come out like this, that type of thing. So if you get this all nice and straight, you can get rid of the possibility of puckering your notebook. What I mean by that is, if it's an elastic, it tends to want to try and bend and pucker. It's kind of hard to do it on my covers because it's a fairly thick leather. But over time, as leather becomes more supple, even my covers they'll pucker because of the elastic pulling it in. When you use string, there's no tension, none whatsoever. And you can set up your cover like normal. Just slide her in there. So with this Last one. It's a little tighter. It's a little harder to get in. Again, that's the benefit to using an elastic over this. But once you've got this set up, you're good to go. It'll be years before I have to worry about anything, if ever, about replacing that elastic. And again, because I'm using eyelets, I called it elastic, I mean the leather cord, and because I'm using eyelets, that's gonna keep everything all nice and secure. You will notice though that I am still using an elastic for the closer. That makes sense to me. You know, I'm not a fan of the long strips of leather that attach to the cover, and you spool it around. When you go to use it, you unspool it, and you then have this long dangly thing which gets in the way. There's other types that use little straps, buckles, which are a pain in the butt, or snaps, which wear out, things like that. And when those things happen, for someone like me, it's relatively easy for me to fix those kind of things, being a leather maker. But for average Joe, it's going to be difficult to do. So really, the elastic for closing really makes a lot of sense. And when it breaks, it's relatively easy to replace that. Again, go down to your craft store or Michael's or something like that. You can get this kind of elastic all over the place. So that's pretty much it. Let me just make sure I'm covering everything I wanted to talk about. Yeah, that looks pretty well it. So there you go. Now you can have your very own traditional style, 4 strings, little decoration, or you can change it up. Get yourself some string or leather cord. If you guys are interested, I don't offer the leather cord as an option, but I'm debating it. So if you're interested in this type of thing at all, as I say, an upgrade option to your cover, let me know in the comments, and I'll see about maybe doing that in the future. But that's pretty much it. So I'll just say one last thing. Thanks for watching.
You have to be quick if you want an Altguild. Altguild.com